Thank you for joining us for another episode of Cam and Focus Weekly. I am your host, Cam. With me over here on that direction is Miss Debbie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this movie. One of my favorites.
Yes. So am I. So, if anybody who's watching missed last week, we discussed The Babadook, which is my favorite horror film. We broke down the story, the writing, the meaning behind everything, whether or not the monster is actually real, all kinds of stuff. So check it out over on the channel in the live tab. Today, we're discussing another one of my personal favorites. That's Collateral, starring Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. Now, this movie came out in 2004, and it was definitely heavily marketed as, an action shoot 'em up, John Wick style, action flick. But it turned out to be something very different, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Debbie, so this is a movie that you like. Did you see it when it first came out?
No, I think it was several years later when I seen it come out. I like Tom Cruise movies, but yeah, I think this is one of the few movies where he plays a bad guy.
Yeah, one of very few. I honestly can't think of another one where he does.
Yeah, I was trying to think when I was waiting for you to put the link up. I was like, gosh, has he ever played another bad guy?
Wait, yes, he has. Les Grossman in Tropic Thunder.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he wasn't like a villain, but he was still a bad guy.
Right. No, this one, he's straight up villain.
Yes, it certainly is. And this is probably one of my favorite performances from him. I mean, Tom Cruise has had a wide range of different roles that he's been a part of, but most of which turn out to be like, the starring hero type of roles. Whereas this one, like you said, is one of very few where he actually gets to play the bad guy. In this film, he plays a hitman named Vincent, and he's been contracted by the Colombian cartel to assassinate witnesses who are going to testify against the person who hired him. Now, to do that, he travels to LA. He gets in a cab. He orders his cabbie to take him to his different hits. Now, obviously, the cabbie doesn't know that at first. He thinks he's just kind of taking him to various places this guy has to go. But the cab driver is Jamie Foxx, who's kind of a all talk and no action kind of guy. Now, I've seen a lot of Jamie Foxx movies, and like Tom Cruise, he has played a variety of different characters, but this one is another one of my favorites from him. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen that many Jamie Foxx movies, but this one I thought he did very well in. I think I could be wrong, but I think normally he plays comedy.
He does do that a lot. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this was I forgot what word I was wanting to use. This is gonna be a bad night. It was just different direction for him.
Yeah.
And I thought he did very well in it.
Definitely. And something that I like about the way this movie is directed. It's directed by Michael Mann, who's known for these kind of, LA at night kind of films. Everything you need to know about the character of Max, played by Jamie Foxx, is portrayed in his very first scene. Like everything you need to know about him. And the one moment that really stands out to me is, when he's getting ready to start his shift and he's cleaning off his cab, he's making sure everything works. As soon as he gets in and shuts that door, all the noise around him in the garage where his cab is kept, all the noise just goes dead silent. And so that kind of portrays to us as an audience that Max is a character who feels more at home in his cab than he does anywhere else. So it definitely sets him up to be. It sets up that confrontation where his comfort is challenged. All the all the bad things that happen throughout the night more or less happen in and around his cab.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I like when he picks up what's her name? Annie,
Yes.
the lawyer.
Yes.
And he's he keeps saying this is just a temporary job, but yet he's been at it for 12 years.
Yep. Yep.
That is not temporary, dude.
Yeah. And he's as I had said before, he's one of those characters who's all talk and no do. And it's funny because he has kind of a similar conversation with her as he does with Tom Cruise. The topic of him being a cabbie comes up, and he gives Tom Cruise kind of the same spiel he gave Annie, where he says, "Oh, this is just temporary, just filling in. I'm saving up for some other projects." Now, unlike Annie, Tom Cruise actually asked him, "Well, what things are you putting together?" And he doesn't have an answer for it.
Yeah.
So he decides to change the subject. He asks him if it's his first time in LA, and this is one of my favorite conversations that the two have, because when the topic of conversation shifts, you kind of see how Tom Cruise's character brings out that adaptability where he just kind of smoothly goes with the conversation, and this is where we get that, in my opinion, kind of iconic segment where he talks about a guy gets on the MTA in LA and dies. And then,
bit of foreshadowing.
Yep. Nobody notices as his corpse does laps around LA for 6 hours. I like how it all comes full circle by the end.
Yeah.
And as they're driving, Jamie Foxx kind of he demonstrates his proficiency with driving a cab. Tom Cruise asks him how long it's going to take to his first destination, and he says 7 minutes. And Tom Cruise says 7, not 8, not 6. And then Max breaks down, all the different things that contribute to the time. And when they arrive at the first stop, Tom Cruise says, "Oh, 7 minutes. I guess you were right." And Max says, "I got lucky with the lights." Which is something he probably tells everybody who acknowledges how right he was about the time. And Tom Cruise says, "Yeah, you probably have the light schedules memorized too."
Well, he said the same thing to Annie.
Yeah. Yeah, and it throws into perspective how scripted Max's life is. He says the same things to different people. Depending on the situation, of course, but it kind of reminds me of myself in a lot of ways, because I'm sure you work in healthcare as well. Whenever we get to talking with patients, we have kind of a grab bag of different conversational topics that we kind of pull from, and we get very practiced in how we approach conversation when we're talking to patients.
Yeah, well, of course, depending on the age, but yeah, of course, I give vaccines a lot. So, if I notice tattoos, if it's something that, Star Wars tattoo, Marvel tattoo, I bring that up, not only for them to become comfortable, but because I get anxiety. It helps me, because as much as I would rather not talk at all.
I understand that.
Yeah, it's just like, in order to get over that awkwardness, it's easier for me to start the conversation if, looking at their shirt, if it's something cool on it, or even with the younger kids, if they have like a Scooby-Doo shirt or whatever, because that was my favorite cartoon back when I was a kid. I try to talk to them about Scooby-Doo or whatever, just to kind of relax them or whatever. And it's just hard because I hate trying to start conversations. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
And me, I'm
I
a hermit.
understand that. Sure.
So yeah, healthcare can be difficult, especially when you get a patient that just has no interest in talking, which is fine. But it's just like, okay, I'll just get in,
Yeah.
give me your shot and get out. Yes.
Yep. I come across patients like that sometimes myself, but there's one doctor that I've worked with in the past, and I work with him every now and then when I have to travel. His name's Dr. Minnie, and the first time I met him, I was kind of new in that office. I hadn't really traveled there much before, and the first time I met him, I was like, oh yeah, okay, new doctor. I'm gonna make a good first impression, and he's gonna love me, and we're gonna work really well together. And so I go up to present my first patient to him, and I say, hey, good morning, Dr. Minnie, how are you? And he just goes, That was it. I'm like, okay, good talk.
Yeah, I've had a few of those. Yeah.
But I mean that's just how he is. I mean, he's really good at what he does. And I saw him at actually a drug rep dinner that was put on, and he was the speaker at the dinner. I was the first one who got there, and he walks up and he shakes my hand. He's like, "Hey, Cam, how you been? How's everything going? How's the family?" And I'm like, "Holy shit! Who are you?"
Sometimes they're just totally different outside of the office. Just
Yes.
totally different.
Yes.
And then you're like, what the hell?
Yeah, definitely. And to kind of bring it back to the movie, you can kind of tell when you're talking to somebody and their conversation with you sounds like it's reading off a script. And just like I'm sure you've done, I know I do a lot. And so sometimes when you talk, you don't necessarily. How do I put this? It's not that you don't believe what you're saying, but it's more that you're not invested in the conversation. You just kind of have a list of replies ready for any question that might be asked to you.
Yeah. I tend to zone out sometimes, and it's just some kind of automatic reply or whatever.
Yes, and that's exactly how Max is in this movie. Because when Tom Cruise asks him, well, how long you been driving? And just without hesitation, 12 years. And you could tell that he didn't really, think about what he was saying before he said it. It was just an automatic reply. And the look on Tom Cruise's face when he said that is, he's like, interesting. But they get to their first destination, and Tom Cruise entices Jamie Foxx with extra money to drive him around LA. And this is where we reach, where shit hits the fan in the story. Tom Cruise's first hit falls out the window directly onto Jamie Foxx's cab. And I don't know what it is about Jamie Foxx's initial reaction when the body hits the car. He goes, "Oh no!" I don't know what it is about the utterance of "oh no" that I just find so comical. But the sandwich he's eating flies everywhere, and he stumbles out of the cab, and Tom Cruise comes back down, and he looks around, and he's like, "Oh no, oh shit, this isn't good." And Jamie Foxx kind of puts the pieces together, and he says, "You killed him?" And Tom Cruise says, "No, I shot him. Bullets in the fall killed him."
Yeah.
just so matter of fact. And it's like he knows what he did, but he's not going to verbally acknowledge that he did it. I don't know if that's like just a practiced deflection that he does, or if he's trying to trip up Jamie Foxx or whatever. But it's such a perfect reply to the situation.
And he kind of, at least to me, Tom Cruise, he kind of comes off, the character kind of comes off robotic.
Yeah.
Got to do this, and it's just very, he I don't even think he thinks about it. He's just, I got a job to do. I got 5 people I need to take out, and this just is the way it's got to be done.
And as the movie goes on, you kind of get a bit more context as to why as to why he's like that. As his philosophy on life starts to come out through his dialogues with Max, you start to realize he's very nihilistic. He thinks that life in general doesn't matter. In the grand scheme of things, what's one person dead? And he doesn't see life as something to be preserved. He sees life as a paycheck. And you never really find out why he's like that, but there's enough hints dropped throughout that allow you to infer and kind of hypothesize about what this guy's life must have been like that would shape him into this calculating sociopath. Really, he says he mentioned being institutionalized and going in and out of foster homes and back and forth with his father. And then Jamie Foxx asked him, well, what happened to him? And Tom Cruise said, I killed him. I was 12. And when Jamie Foxx kind of looks back at him like, really? Tom Cruise laughs and says, I'm kidding. He died of liver disease.
Yeah, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Tom Cruise in this movie never lies. He never tells an outright lie. And so I find it kind of hard to believe that would be the one thing he would lie about.
True.
And when you think back to how how he kind of shifts the blame for killing off of himself, oh, you're gonna talk like this when you just push the guy out the window? I didn't push him; he fell. I think that Tom Cruise either attempted to kill his father or inflict some kind of mortal wound that wasn't able to be fixed because his father had such bad liver disease. That's my hypothesis there.
So possibly skirting the truth like he does throughout the whole movie.
Right, exactly. And as their conversations go on, Max starts to kind of break down Vincent's character as opposed to vice versa, where Max is just kind of Vincent's punching bag. Max says, I don't know what you went through, but all the parts that come standard and everybody else and you just aren't there. And you can see that visibly kind of shakes him up a bit. His character's not really used to being challenged in a psychological or philosophical way. It's fun to see the layers peeled back.
Yeah, I mean, I know he's a hitman, but I mean, you could probably kind of compare him to a type of serial killer where, I mean, there's just something missing.
Yeah.
In their psychological makeup.
Yeah.
Either there's no sympathy, there's no empathy. They just don't care. I don't know if they weren't loved as a kid or if they were just born that way or what the deal is, but yeah, there's just that part of humanity, that one part that makes everybody human is totally gone.
Yeah.
There's just nothing there. They don't care.
It's easy to kind of go down the route of like, oh, well, he got this way because he started off with, torturing animals or something like that. But, that kind of grossly oversimplifies the complexity of, nature versus nurture, how our upbringing can affect our psyche. I mean, there's so many facets to development that, Tom Cruise's character might have had, a perfect life, but there was just something wrong about it that caused that kind of planted that seed of nihilism in there that only festered as he got older and experienced more hardship. Although, I mean, that's kind of skating past the fact that it's very likely that he was an institutionalized kid who probably killed his father. Um, but the fact that his backstory is never really explored much. I mean, it's kind of like the Joker in the Dark Knight. You know, less is more.
Hmm.
The more you have to imagine, the more intimidating or complex or personal that character's story can become.
And sometimes less is better.
Yes, absolutely. Um, yeah, that's kind of why I've said this before. I'm not really a huge fan of anime. You know, the medium as a whole just isn't really my thing. But a lot of the animes that I have watched, you know, there's a big scene dedicated to like completely explaining the villain's backstory, and there's a flashback throughout the episode talking, you know, their tortured life and you know, the things they had to do to survive or something like that, and trying to make the villain someone who is tragic instead of villainous.
Hmm.
And you know, sometimes people just are that way. And Vincent is one of those characters. Yeah, he can have, you know, a harsh backstory and whatnot, but at the same time, he's a character who just is the way he is,
Right.
and I think that's a lot more powerful than uh, you know, showing us why he is the way he is. It takes away all the imagination from it.
Hmm. Right.
So after that first hit gone wrong, um, Max is very visibly shaken up, and he's driving around with this body in his trunk. But before that, probably one of the most humorous parts of the movie. You know, after they get the dead body in the trunk, and Max is just like, "Hey, how about you take the cab? You know, just take it. I'll just chill. You know, I'm not gonna say nothing." And Tom Cruise is like, "You promised not to tell anyone, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I promise." And Tom Cruise is just like, "Get in the fucking car."
Right.
I
Right.
love that.
Sure you won't
I
tell
love
anybody.
that deadpan delivery from him. Get in the fucking car. So, but Max is driving around in his smashed up car. He's very visibly shaken. Tom Cruise kind of lectures him about you know, improvise. You know, that they still have this entire night to get through. They get pulled over by cops, and as they get out of the car, Tom Cruise is like, "You better talk your way out of this. You don't have the trunk space for them." And making good on Tom Cruise's advice to improvise, in downtown LA, Max says he hit a deer. And the cop is just
Stranger
like,
things have happened in LA.
a South Central deer. Yeah, you know, they're out here. They're wreaking havoc, man. It's
Well, later in the movie, we do see a coyote or a
yes,
wolf, or I'm not sure what it was, but
a couple of coyotes, I do believe, and that sequence was completely unplanned. As they were filming, a couple of coyotes just ran across, you know, ran across where they were filming, and Michael Mann's like, "Ooh, get those, get those, get those," and that is what gave us probably one of the most introspective scenes in the entire movie.
hmm.
You know, you have the coyotes that run across. Both Max and Vincent are watching them. You have the amazing song "Shadow on the Sun" by Audio Slave that starts up. And as they're driving, Vincent's just looking at the back of Max's head, and like that, like the look in his eyes, you can just infer so much about what he's thinking. It's a really powerful scene. I love whenever a scene can convey a lot with no dialogue, but you still have no clue what the characters are thinking. I mean, I think that's just fantastic storytelling right there. But they reach the second hit. Tom Cruise, you know, ties Sam to the steering wheel of the cab, and as he's getting out, Sam gets a call from his boss, and his boss is talking about, "Oh, you know, we got a call from the cops. They say you were in a car crash," and he tells Max that Max is going to end up being liable for it. And
Hmm.
Tom Cruise jumps in and says, um, something Ricardo, Assistant U.S. Attorney, and I'm reporting to the DMV. And he, rips the guy a new one, saying that his liability, insurance covers whatever. And when he tells Max to get on the mic and, call him an asshole, Max is just like, "You're an asshole."
It's very deadpan.
He's just so unsure of himself. And he says, if you ever try to pull any shit, I'm going to have to take this yellow cab and stick it up your fat ass. And as Tom Cruise is getting out of the cab, he just gives him one last. It's so good. And I mean, that makes good on Tom Cruise's, improvise speech. Mm-hmm. And, I've seen a lot of people online say, oh, well, he was looking out for Max, he didn't want a working man to get extorted and whatnot. He's just like, no, he didn't want something to screw up his night.
Yeah.
He didn't want, people to be out looking for Max and, potentially have Vincent's job get messed with.
Yeah, because Vincent's on a very strict schedule.
Yes, a very strict schedule. But he goes up, and the person he kills up there is a lawyer criminal who's going to testify against Felix, which is the man that hired Vincent. And while he's up there, a few thugs come up to Max's car, and Max is trying to get them to untie him and get him out of there. And one guy just pulls out his gun. And Max is like, "Are you kidding me?"
I mean, you should have known he was in LA.
Yeah, of course. And now that's something I noticed, because I've seen this movie probably 24 times throughout the last 10 years. Something I noticed is after Max says, "Can't you see my hands are tied to the steering wheel?" I don't know if it was like an audio glitch or something, but the thug says, I don't fucking care. I don't give a fuck what they're tied to. But that's not what you hear. You hear, what they're tied to. And like I don't know if you've ever caught that before. I don't know if maybe it's something like on the Blu-ray or something like that. But I mean, that's audio in the movie. He says, what they're tied to.
Yeah, I watched it on Paramount. And I do think, I think there is something. I don't think it's just a Blu-ray. I think it's something.
Yeah.
Because the mouth doesn't go with what comes across on screen, because I always watch everything in captions.
Right. Yeah, but he takes Max's wallet, he takes Vincent's briefcase, and this is where we get the most iconic scene in the movie. "Yo, homie, that my briefcase?" And then he just wastes them. He just blows them away. And the technical proficiency with which Tom Cruise executes that, he knocks the guy's gun aside, fires from the hip, and then does the Mozambique drill of 2 in the chest, 1 in the head.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so good. I don't know what it is about the sound of the gunshots, but I mean the sound designer. The sound designers just deserve all the kudos there, because it sounds so gritty.
Well, my question is, he's a hitman, and that gun is loud. Why wouldn't you have a silencer?
Well, I don't know. Maybe that was one of the things in his briefcase.
Oh, well, yeah.
But at the same time, they're in downtown LA. There's, you're going to hear gunshots any day of the week. And I mean, what's a couple more?
I guess, but I would think as a gunman or as a hitman, you wouldn't want to track any attention, or small attention as possible in as loud as that gun is, because even, in, let's see, the bar, the dance disco thing, I mean, the gun is loud, and it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I just always think of hitmen with, they always have a silencer of some type.
Oh well, he does use one though. He uses it against his third hit, which is the man in the jazz club. Well, he and Max go there. They listen to him play jazz for a while, and then they sit down, and he starts talking about how he used to know Miles Davis, which, if you don't know, he was a legendary trumpet player back in, I believe, the 50s. 50s or 60s, like just around the time of the Vietnam War, but legendary trumpet player. And as he finishes his story, Vincent finally drops the ball and says, I got to tell the folks over at Culiacan and Cartagena that story. And Culiacan and Cartagena are two cities in Colombia that are known for having a very large cartel presence. And that's when you see the shift on Daniel, that's the jazz man's face. You see the shift on his face, and it's just it's a phenomenal moment. So much weight just delivered in those couple of seconds of his face going from happy to oh shit.
Yeah. Not looking good.
No. Tom Cruise gives him an ultimatum and says, I'll ask you a jazz question, and if you get it right, we'll let you go, but you have to disappear. So he asked the question, where did Miles Davis learn music? And Max, of course, being the genius that he is, just goes, music school. He learned at music school. But Daniel gives his answer, which ends up not being the complete answer. And because of that, Tom Cruise shoots him dead. After he dies, Tom Cruise corrects him and says, dropped out of Juilliard after less than a year, tracked down Charlie Parker on 52nd Street, who mentored him for the next 3 years. And you can see on his face that he really didn't want to kill that guy.
Right.
He has that moment of like, it really sucks that I had to do that. And then Max, leaves the bar, and he's kind of having a bit of a panic attack, and Tom Cruise smacks some sense into him. And then he gets a call from his boss again saying that his mother's been asking about him. And this probably made you happy, Debbie, as someone who was kind of analyzing his patterns as a hitman. Tom Cruise was like, hello, if you're not there, it breaks routine. People come looking for you, come looking for this cab. So they go to visit Max's mom in the hospital, and Tom Cruise tells him to bring up flowers, and Max says, well, they're not going to mean anything to her. She doesn't like them. And Tom Cruise looks at him and says, she carried you in her womb for 9 months. But they get the flowers, they go up there, and Max gives them to her, and she says, what am I going to do with flowers? Just wait for them to die? And he says, I didn't buy them. He did. He points at Vincent, and
complete shift. Oh, they're so beautiful.
Yeah, and his face. I mean, his face is like, oh well, okay, that just happened. But Max in the corner, you can see him go,
seriously, really? What?
But this is where the facade kind of gets pulled away, where Max's mother tells Vincent about Max's supposed business that he has, driving limos for celebrities. And while she and Vincent are talking, he takes the opportunity to grab Vincent's briefcase and start running away. Right. So this is where we get our Tom Cruise sprint.
Every movie, practically.
Yeah, I don't know like when that started, but every movie he's in, he has to sprint at some point. And by God, he makes it look good. So
Yeah, I was laughing at that scene when he's chasing Jamie because you watch Jamie run, and of course, Jamie keeps looking back, but still, Jamie's run is like all over the place. And Tom Cruise, he's just got that specific run that he does.
well, it's almost like a cheetah, you know, that like as they're running, their head doesn't move. It's almost mechanical how it looks when they run. But eventually, Tom Cruise catches up to him, and Max decides to throw his briefcase off the bridge, and it gets hit by a semi truck. And understandably, Vincent's pretty peeved at that. So he has Max go into a nightclub where his employer is to get a new workup. And this is kind of where where Max starts to come out of his shell a little bit. You know, as he goes in, he sits down with the cartel boss, and you know, he starts talking about, you know, how pissed off would Santa Claus be if, you know, his helpers lost his list. And you know, Max goes in posing as Vincent because Vincent wants to maintain his anonymity and stuff. And Felix asks him, "What do you have to say about that?" And Max finally goes, "I think you should tell the guy behind me to put the gun away." And then a second later, Max is like in full character. He says,
I love that shift because, you know, during the first part of that conversation, he's very timid. He's, you know, voice is kind of shaky. And then I don't know what clicked, but all of a sudden, you know, he's Vincent.
Yeah.
Or the character of.
Yeah. He puts on a little bit of a intimidation well, not intimidation tactics, but he's very matter of fact about
bravado.
He lies about saying that he picked up a tail. That's why he tossed the list in order to protect Felix. So he does get the list, or you know, that he does get the rest of the list from him. And as he's leaving, he basically takes money out of Vincent's pocket by saying, "As a token of my appreciation, I'd like to offer a discount of 25%. You know what? Make it 35."
Yeah, what the hell?
It's not his money. Who cares? But he and Max and Vincent, you know, keep driving, and they continue talking and waxing philosophical about, you know, about the things that they've been through, and, you know, what their outlook on life is. And I just love, I love these conversations that they have, because they're not necessarily super expository. They don't really have too much to do with, you know, the general plot at large. It's more just about exploring them as people. And I love the conversations. Every time that I watch this movie, that's the main thing I look forward to, is just listening to them talk.
Totally agree. Yeah. A lot goes on in those conversations.
Yes, definitely. And it speaks to Michael Mann's talent as a director, and not just that, but the talent of the actors as well, that they can make a movie that takes place about 70% of the time in a cab and still make it so damn interesting. So they're on their way to the fourth hit of the night, which is another witness who's hiding out at a Korean nightclub. And but before they get there, you know, again, we get that iconic scene of the coyotes running across the road. And when they get there, that's when we get that awesome song "Ready Steady Go" by Paul Oakenfold that comes on. The Korean version, of course, because they're in a Korean nightclub. But it plays throughout the whole scene, like with no breaks in between. And I don't know, it really adds to the momentum of it, because, you know, it's not like a John Wick action scene where he just goes through and shoots everybody that he can
Mm-hmm.
see. There's a few shots fired, sure, but Tom Cruise for the most part is on a forward path to his target, and once he gets him, he's gone.
Right.
And I love that after Tom Cruise spots him from across the way, you can see on his face that he's kind of psyching himself up for it, because yeah, he's an accomplished hitman. Yes, he doesn't care much about human life, but still, opening fire on somebody in the middle of a crowded nightclub has got to be nerve-wracking. And so you can see in his eyes that he's like, okay, let's go.
And I like the way he took out some bodyguards or security. I don't know what they were along the way. I didn't understand why he had Max, because he told Max, to the right, and just, I was like, aren't you worried about Max just like disappearing? Because there was just so many people in there. That had to be a violation code. I'm sorry, but
well, yeah, I'm sure that he was probably a little bit worried about Max taking off, but he probably figured that he knew Max enough to know that he wouldn't, because he did tell him, stand right over there. If you run, innocent people get the first rounds.
True.
So, but he makes his way up to his target, and the whole plan just goes sideways because the FBI, who thinks that Max is Vincent, tries to apprehend him, and it starts a big shootout in the middle of the club. And a couple of guys have their guns on Max, and when Vincent sees that, he turns around and shoots them. And Max gives him a look like, "Holy shit, you saved me!" And Vincent looks at him like, "You're goddamn right, I did." But Vincent finally takes out his target, and he starts to leave the nightclub. He shoots the FBI agent who was trying to assist Max, played by Mark Ruffalo. I know we haven't brought him up yet, but to be honest, his part in the movie could have easily not been there.
Other than the fact that he was the only one that put it together that, it wasn't the cab driver, because that's what the FBI was going by, that, the cab driver. But Mark knew Fanning. Somewhere earlier in the movie, they talk about another cab driver who supposedly killed all these people, and then he committed suicide.
Right.
But he didn't have any kind of criminal record or anything. And I think that's where, Mark had the inside information.
Definitely. Which sucks, because he was taken out just so quickly, just without warning. And then once he's gone, the movie just continues on as usual. And it really lends credence to, like, the one bad night kind of vibe this movie has.
Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't believe Vincent got out way before. How did Vincent get to the cab before Jamie did? Because Jamie and the cop, or Mark, left before Vincent did. I was just like, how did that happen?
I don't know. Hollywood movie magic, smoke and mirrors.
I guess. Gotta move the story along.
Yeah, of course. So after Vincent kills Fanning, they drive away again, and Max is noticeably pissed off because he thought that he was going to get out of this alive, and then he's basically back where he started with Vincent. So they start to talk and break each other down again. And Max finally says, "You know what? If it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter." And he tries to kill the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads into my second most, or the second most funny part in the movie, is after he flips the cab, and they're upside down. Vincent goes to reach for his gun, realizes it's not there, and pulls out a flashlight and just starts smacking Max with it. Like, I mean, it wasn't like he was trying to hurt him. It was more just like an annoyed older brother just smacking
I think he
their
was
younger
just
sibling.
frustrated and like, God damn it, you're messing up my night. And what was hilarious, or I thought it was funny, because you don't see too much emotion from Cruise in this whole movie. But when Jamie decides, yeah, I'm going to take us both out, and he's, picking up speed, he's driving erratically, Vincent actually looks scared.
Oh yeah, very nervous.
And I was like, that's the first time we see that. We don't we don't see him being scared really about anything.
Yeah, well, it's the first time throughout that night that the scenario was legitimately out of his control.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah, because he's always in control.
Always. And he talks about, improvise and adapt and blah, blah, blah. But when things get out of his control, he doesn't know what to do.
Right. Because he kept threatening Max with the gun, and Max was like, well, you don't care? I don't care.
Yeah, shoot me. Go ahead. Kill us both.
Yeah.
But they do both survive the crash. And Vincent, being the good workman that he is, goes out to finish his job. And Max, when he realizes that Annie is Vincent's last target, he runs out to help her. He calls Annie and warns her that he's coming. And this scene is almost like straight out of a horror movie. Like most of what we see is like Vincent's silhouette just kind of scanning the office, just looking for her. And we see him, put the pieces together as to where she probably is. And then when Max finally shows up, he tells Vincent to drop the gun. And Vincent says, well, what are you going to do about it? Obviously, mocking Max for being the man who doesn't take action, which Max proves him wrong, and he shoots him. It blows part of his ear off. And so initiates the chase. And the shot where... there's a couple of shots. One where Vincent picks up a chair and hurls it at a glass window. And the next shot is him bursting through that window. Well, he steps on the chair accidentally, and it makes him topple over. And Tom Cruise hits the ground really hard. That part wasn't scripted. He didn't mean to fall like that. But of course, Tom Cruise, being the man who is so committed to stunt work and being the physical presence in the movie, he just keeps going. He gets up and keeps running. But you can tell from the way he fell, like that didn't feel good.
Well, that's kind of like, I don't know. I assume it's one of the Mission Impossible movies, but it's a scene where he's jumping between roofs, and I think he miscalculated, and he breaks his ankle because he does not land on the roof, and he keeps going.
Yeah, I think that was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. I think. But yes, I do know exactly what you're talking about. I couldn't remember if it was his ankle or if it was one of his ribs. But yes,
yeah, it was his ankle.
You're absolutely right.
They show it in slow mo, and you just see that ankle. And I'm like, oh, I don't even know how he ran on it.
Yeah,
adrenaline, but
yeah, right, exactly. I really hate leg injuries. Like I like to watch MMA. It's something that I really enjoy doing. But every now and then I come across one where, someone goes for a leg kick and it snaps their shin, or they'll step back on the mat and their big toe will snap out of place or something. And I'm just like, I don't know what it is. It's like broken bones make me physically ill.
Oh.
But Vincent chases Max and Annie, and Vincent has a couple of moments where he has to stop and think about where they might have gone, and this leads them to the train. They get on, they run to the back of it. Vincent finally has them cornered, and when Vincent and Max are on opposite sides of the door, they both start firing their guns. And Vincent, being so adherent to his routine, does what he did throughout the movie is the Mozambique drill, which is 2 in the chest, 1 in the head. Yeah, and he did that routine twice as he was trying to shoot at Max. But Max is like moving back and forth, just shooting with his eyes closed and shooting randomly. And so because of that, Vincent missed every shot, and Max was the one who ended up killing him.
Right.
Well, we have that great moment where Vincent goes to reload his gun, and the magazine just drops out of his hand, and he doesn't, stew over it. He doesn't get angry. He's just like, okay, all right, I was bested. And he has a moment, just before he sits down, he kind of gives the chair a couple of looks. Like it's almost like in his head he's thinking, okay, well, this is where it's going to happen, I guess. He sits down, and their first conversation is brought full circle. Max, trying to be compassionate, tells Vincent, we're almost at the next stop. And Vincent just says, guy gets on the MTA in LA, dies. And he asks him, do you think anybody will notice? And then he dies. Yeah. But it's such a great villain moment that, such a great character moment in general, that his last thoughts were a reflection of something that represents his overall philosophy on life. And he has that kind of moment of introspection, and it's so profound. I mean, I don't know what it is. It's probably my favorite villain send off of anything that I've seen. And then Max and Annie get off the train, and the movie ends.
Yeah.
We don't get a conclusion as to how law enforcement gets involved, or whether or not anybody finds Vincent's body or anything like that. It just ends there as the sun rises over LA. And so, yeah, it's just one bad night, and that's the entire story.
I don't know. I just would have figured, I mean, eventually the body will be found, but I mean, that's like Max's way to prove that it wasn't him, but yet, doesn't. My first thought is, go to the front of the train and tell the conductor. Get the police there instead of, unless he just thought, you called it, you're going to run around LA 6 times before somebody notices you're dead.
Yeah. But I mean, he does have the eyewitness testimony of a prosecutor on his side, with Annie.
True.
So I'm sure that carries some amount of weight. But I mean, I'm sure they call 911 and they say, hey, there's a dead guy on this train over here, and by the way, he tried to kill us. So I can come in for questioning now, or maybe a little bit later. Or
and he's killed several people throughout the night.
Yes. But I mean, overall, I mean, one of my all-time favorite movies. It's so out of the box for what you'd expect from cinema today, where everything has to be, big explosions, interconnected story with dozens of other movies. Everything has to be super flashy. I mean, this movie is subdued. It's a very calm movie. It is, I mean, at its core, putting aside the assassination storyline and whatnot, this movie is essentially about 2 guys in a cab who talk and change each other's lives, and everything else around it only adds weight to that central idea. And this is a movie that I never get tired of. I watch it probably like once every couple of months, which is crazy for me, because there's not really any other movies that I can do that for.
I usually watch it once a year whenever it pops up.
Yeah.
on whatever streaming service. Uh, I did like before the car flip, Tom or Vincent calls out Max,
Yeah.
and I think you mentioned it earlier about, 12 years is not temp.
Yeah.
You lied to your mother, you could, just take a loan out and do this, you don't have to, I think he was saving up for tires and I don't know. He had a long list of stuff, Max did,
Excuses.
yeah, about, why he hasn't started yet. So it's just like,
yeah,
Tom called him out on it. And I think that was another thing that kind of sent him over the edge.
yeah, definitely. Well, the thing is, I mean, it's not just that Vincent called him out on it. It's the fact that what he says really puts into perspective for Max just how much time he's wasted.
Mhm.
Because you're right. I mean, Tom Cruise says all it would have been to put a down payment on a town car or something. He tells him the things that he could be doing, and he says, and then one day you're old and you regret those things you never did because you were never going to do them anyway. All you were going to do
You're
was keep on
sitting in front of the TV watching daytime soap operas.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see it like all click in Max's head that he's like, holy shit, this guy's right. I've been wasting my life. So time to take charge. And he flips the car. Bit of an overreaction, but
It was great though.
Yes. I love this movie. I love the exploration of character. I love the writing, the cinematography. I mean, LA at night has never looked this good since. It really hasn't. And I don't know. I can't think. Oh, no, I take that back. There is one small thing in the movie that really that takes me out of that particular moment. It's after the first hit where Tom Cruise is talking to Jamie Foxx about Rwanda. Tens of thousands of people killed in one night, and you didn't bat an eye. And Max says, "I don't know any Rwandans." And Vincent says, "You don't know the guy in the trunk either." That shot where he says, "You don't know the guy in the trunk either." That shot must have been a reshoot or something because the angle is very different. The color grading is very different. It looks like it was dubbed over. And that one shot feels so out of place. I mean, narratively, what he says is fine, but just the composition of that one shot is very reshooty.
I guess I didn't notice it.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing major. It's literally less than 2 seconds. And if there's less than 2 seconds about a movie that I don't like, I'd say that movie's pretty damn good. So.
True. Yeah, stuff like that, especially today with CGI. A lot of things that people pick out, I don't know. I mean, it literally has to smack me in the face. Perfect example, Flash. The CGI in that was just so bad. I mean, it's just like,
yeah,
yeah, you could not. I mean,
yeah,
I know the director or whoever said, well, that was done on purpose to show what, the force speed looks like. And I'm like, no.
No, that movie was in development hell for like 2 years and the effects suffered for it. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy The Flash. I actually think it's not a bad movie. But yes, the CGI is so just abysmal. And as everybody looks so uncanny valley, and then you have this segment near the end where we see Nicolas Cage as Superman, and I'm just like, okay, computer animated Nicolas Cage wasn't exactly on my bingo card for today, but we got it.
Yeah, a lot of those cameos. Yeah, it's just like, really. You couldn't do better than
Uh,
Woo. Yeah, that Now that smacked me in the face. That
Yeah.
but usually when I watch reviews or whatever and people are picking on stuff, I was like, I didn't even notice it, but
Yeah.
I'm not that type of critic unless, like I said, it smacks me in the face. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, typically, whenever I watch a movie, especially for the first time, I don't watch it looking for things to dislike about it. And I think that's something that separates two very different film watchers. And we see it a lot in the Star Wars fandom, especially. We see, the people who are just determined to hate something before they even see it. And so, when you have that mentality in mind, how could you possibly like it?
right.
But me, on the other hand, I watch movies to get invested. I watch movies to, be told a good story. I'm not looking for, well, this character wouldn't do that. That's not where that thing should be. I I don't know. I feel like people like that are very bitter, and I try to not be one of those people. Doesn't work all the time, but I try.
Yeah, I go to the movies to be entertained. If I'm totally involved in the movie, it keeps my attention or keeps me guessing or has really good action, storyline, whatever. Great. I like the movie. But if it, if I'm constantly looking at my watch, oh my God, only 10 minutes has went by and it feels like an hour.
Oh my God. Yeah,
Then generally I'm not going to like the movie.
I know exactly what you mean. I was definitely that way whenever I had to watch the Emu War for the stream a couple weeks ago. That one started off with me thinking, "Oh my God, this is actually hilarious. I might enjoy this." And then about 20 minutes later, I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, "There's, I've only been here for 20 minutes. This movie's been on for like an hour."
How long was the movie?
It was like an hour and 10 minutes without credits.
Oh,
Barely feature film length. Oh God, it was awful. It was so awful. And don't get me wrong, that movie wasn't trying to be good.
Right.
But I mean, there's a limit to how awful something can be to where it becomes unpleasant. And that was an unpleasant movie. But if you ever want to check it out, it's fun, kind of.
Yeah, I think I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, you're saving yourself a lot of trauma there. All right. Well, we're at about an hour. I'd say that'll about do it for this episode of Cam and Focus Weekly. Yeah, Collateral, one of my all-time favorite movies. And Debbie, I think you told me it's one of your favorites as well. So, Thank you very much for joining.
I was excited earlier this week when you said this is what we're talking about, or what you guys were talking about. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Debbie's like, finally, one that I like. Well, Debbie, what's going on this coming week? What do you have any shameless plugs for Feast of Fandoms?
MCU Monday. We're talking about Daredevil. We're talking about the double episode, so that's at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. Wednesday we'll have a War of the Stars episode. Thursday we will be talking about, I believe it's the something Dark Side.
Yes, the
Star
Family
Wars.
Guy spoof.
Yes, so we'll be talking about that. And Saturday's Geek Gauntlet, they talk about everything. So, and I think that's about it.
All right. Yeah, and same with me. I'll be over. To anybody who's watching, I'll be over on the Feast of Fandoms Cantina Happy Hour. I almost called it the GNN Cantina Happy Hour, but then I realized that ship sailed a long time ago.
It's been over a year, Cam.
I know, but it's hard to get those three letters out of my head. I devoted 5 years of my life to it, so tough habit to break. And then next Sunday, we'll be doing another episode of Cam and Focus Weekly. Don't know yet what the movie of the week is. We'll have to check our list. We have a few things that we've discussed on there that I haven't checked off yet. But I will figure out, collectively what the next movie should be, and then I'll make the announcement over on my Facebook page. And if you haven't, check out my other live streams that I've done on Cam and Focus in the live tab. And I also did a first impressions video for the film Ash, which is a new indie cosmic horror film that came out in theaters not long ago. It's become the best performing video on my channel, so that's nice. And I think I'll be doing more first impression videos moving forward. I just have to get my ass into the theater, which is hard to make time for, but it is what it is. Anyways,
not cheap.
No, they're not cheap. Well, I mean, if you're someone who wants to go frequently, you get like a Fandango membership or something, and it kind of pays for itself. But I don't know if I can go as frequently enough to make it pay for itself. But I don't know. We'll see. In the meantime, thank you everybody for joining, and thank you everybody for viewing this episode of Cam and Focus Weekly. Thank you, Debbie, very much for joining me. It was a lot of fun talking about Collateral.
Yeah.
Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell notification. I don't know why I put on an accent there. That was weird.
It's like, oh, split personality.
I started to sound like Robin Williams in Aladdin when he was playing the vendor at the very beginning. Wait, don't go.
There's more.
All right. Well, that'll be it. Thank you for joining. Have a good night. See you next week.